All right, my friends, welcome to episode 6 of the RPG Backlog, where we are taking on Final Fantasy XII. This is Prof Plays Games, Larry, and over there is my friend Travis. How you doing, Travis?
I'm all right.
Yeah? Having some good gaming experiences?
I'm having some gaming experiences.
As folks who have been following along the podcast know, we've been having an interesting relationship with Final Fantasy XII. This is the section where my spirits around this game have begun to climb. When we got out of Arcades, which is where we left the last episode, we left Arcades, went to the port with Redos, the Balfenheim port. And then this episode, we are moving forward into the Feywood. So there's like a mist that's in this wooded area that's hard to get through. But then the ghost, Rassler's ghost, appears and it kind of opens up. And when it opens up, they see Giruvegan there. And there's something that happens there. There's some puzzles and things we'll talk about when we get to the gameplay. But basically, they get to Giruvegan, and then they find the great crystal inside of Giruvegan, which is literally, I guess, a crystal that you go inside of. Is that what you understood? You're in a crystal?
That's what I got. Well, no, it was kind of weird. It was more, I guess it was a crystal. I figure it was more of just the very dense amount of mist that was typically impenetrable because it would, I don't know if it would just mess with you or just people stayed the hell away from it.
Well, that tracks with Final Fantasy, right? Like, if I'm thinking about Final Fantasy XVI, your boy Clive is going through and destroying these crystals because they're the source of the magic, right? They're like condensed magic fuel, basically.
Yeah, and people, well, I mean, but there they were actually going down into them and mining pieces out of them.
That's true, yeah.
But this, I feel like the mist is more of just something that people don't fully understand, and they're and fair enough, because I don't think it ever fully got explained to us.
It did not. No, it did not. It just kind of, there's a few comments here and there, specifically around Fran when she's kind of getting high or getting crazy because of this mist. But so they go to the Great Crystal, and Ash is like taken away by these godlike things called the Akuria, and they're talking to her about Ivalice, the history of Ivalice, and they're talking about how Ash is their next dynast king, kind of following in the footsteps of Wraithwall. And they give her something called the Treaty Blade, which is going to be used to carve out new pieces of nethicite from something called the Sun Crest, which is the source of all of this nethicite power. And then they are trying to, I guess their point is for her to go destroy the Akuria, this god that is working with Dr. Sid named Vana. Vana is the one who is being talked to by Dr. Sid when people think he's going crazy, but he's talking to this creature. And Vana taught Dr. Sid about making nethicite. Ash decides, she takes a sword, and I assume she's like, I'm going to go do this thing, right? I'm going to go to the world, and I'm going to go carve something out of the Suncrest. I don't know if you got the impression that she was kind of like vacillating, trying to figure out what she was going to do in that moment.
I felt like she wasn't sure of herself, but I had the sneaking suspicion at that point in time that the image of Rassler was going to show up and guide her as it had been, and I have my suspicions on what that really was.
Yeah, and does that come to light in this chunk that we're exploring, or does it come in Pharos? I can't remember.
That comes to light at the top of the Pharos. But
okay, great.
We're jumping ahead there, but what happens there solidified my thoughts on what was really going on with that image.
Yeah, I agree. And if you want to hear about that, tune into episode 7. But for here, they come back, she comes back holding the sword. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the rest of the party heard the gods talking to her. So they kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah. Bosch even admits we couldn't see them, but we could hear them. So
that was it, yeah.
Are you really going to do what they said they're going to do?
Right. She's like, I don't know. And then they had thought Dr. Sid was kind of racing to the same place to get the treaty blade, but that they realized no, he was never going to do it. So they went there and got it, and they're going to, I think we end this chunk with them going back to the Balfenheim port to kind of regroup with Redas. And that's, it's a place for the player to like recoup their items and shit. And that's where this chunk is going to end. The next chunk from there, they're going to head to this Tower of Pharos to kind of move towards the Suncrist. But yeah, for this section, overall thoughts from you? What's, did it get better at all?
No. It's the same game it's been. The only thing that got better is I didn't have to do the stupid, like, run around and talk to people BS quest.
But that's just the worst part of the game, man.
Again, as we discussed last time, that's just, let's pad the game and make it longer because we can. But overall, it's the same as it's been the whole time. Yeah, you have a few more abilities, but at the same time, it's like, okay, the combat's still the same as it was. Story's still solid, but otherwise, no, nothing there grabbed me. So I'm curious, because you kept saying, like, oh my God, this is pulling me in, this is pulling me in. I'm like, what is it that grabbed you at this point?
So I've been thinking about it for a while, because for a while I was thinking, boy, do I like this next section because I really hated Arcades that much? And I think that's probably part of it. But I sort of liked, I don't know it feels like, and I think this is true, there's a little bit of a different hand of the creator going on behind the scenes in the end part of the game. I know that Matsuno left around right before Arcades. And there is some controversy is the wrong word, but like fans know he left, and then the Arcades thing was built, and people don't like the Arcades section. They're like, oh, the new people made this, and it's not as good as the stuff that came before. But it just felt like it was less. We talked last time where it felt like the gameplay, the grinding, the kind of exploration and stuff is like if they had cut 40% of it and left the 60%, like it could have been stronger. I felt like that's what happened here, for me at least. Like the Feywood, I really enjoyed the puzzles with the little, I don't know, like the porticos or whatever, where you have to go to a certain one and kind of look around through all the different openings to see the one that has the illusion of like a forest, and that's the direction you go, and you're trying to solve this kind of basic puzzle. Following that, and it wasn't too long, it wasn't too much. It was different sort of gameplay, different sort of experience. And then you get led to basically the gates of Giruvegan. You have to open it with your the first summon or the first Esper that you get, Belias. And then you pop into this new area, Giruvegan, and then you get into the crystal. It just felt like there was like new stuff happening in short order, as opposed to previously where it's, there were new things that were happening, but they were so long, to me at least, that it wore out its welcome. And everything in this section didn't wear out its welcome. Everything was different. The crystal was different. The puzzle of going up and down and which way to go in the crystal was different and a little frustrating, but thank God guides exist. So I think overall that's probably what made it better for me. And then just the story ramping up and there being more story.
So as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm sitting there thinking, and that I've pushed through this game for the most part today in the last few hours.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking back on the last 2 days where I've really gone through the part that we're discussing and the rest of the game. And I'm like, I'm not as upset, or I wasn't dreading that much of going back to the game today when I did, that I was prior to it. And I will admit that, yes, you are right. It was, things seemed to happen, not so much that they seemed to happen, but it just felt like you had a clear cut, just A, B story,
mm-hmm.
A, B story, A, B story.
Exactly.
Right. And it wasn't this, because the one thing I will say, going to the Belfheim port the first time, I left. And no. Actually, it was when we're supposed to leave the Belfheim port to go to the Giruvegan. and go to the Feywood. I'm like, okay. I walked out the north part of the port and started running through the things. I'm like, dude, when the hell am I going to hit the place I go? And then I look at it, I was like, oh, you're supposed to be in the Feywood. Open up the map. It's like, wait, that shit's all, like, I'm basically back to Arcades.
Oh,
By walking through. I'm like, motherfucker, I got to go all the way back. And then I realized what you were supposed to have done was, like, teleport.
Yeah, use the save crystal, yeah.
Over close to it and then run through it. And I was kind of pissed, but it was actually probably good because when I left Balfenheim,
yeah.
Balfenheim Port, I was like level 32. And I'm sitting there going, yeah. And FYI, I'm like level 40 right now. And if I gained like 3 levels doing the shit that I was doing fucking around.
Which was maybe necessary for you?
Yeah, probably was necessary. Because there's actually a couple fights in here, not in this section, but the next section that, no, there was one fight specifically in the next section that wrecked my shit. And I barely got through it. And I'm like, wow. But anyways, so I digress. The point being is that I did not feel the dread to go back and play the game that I had previously. So
I feel like that's a victory. Like, I feel like that may be the same feeling that I had, like more subdued in you, but I was excited to come back where you were like not dreading it. Like you've been dreading it earlier.
And I think that's probably because my assumption, I could be wrong, but based upon our conversations, I think I had a stronger negative feeling towards this game previously up to this point. So that makes sense that I'm not like, yeah, this is awesome. More like, okay, I can handle it now.
Yeah, it's not like pulling teeth. Also, I think for me, for some reason, not just because it was the point A to point B, it felt more linear. I just felt better at the game, or I was speeding through this. Like I felt like it was finally starting to hum, which was nice. It kind of reminded me, you played Final Fantasy XV, right?
No.
Oh, damn. Okay, so basically the whole front half is like open world. The team had a lot of time to spend building this big game, and then they're out of time, out of budget, just like with this game. And then the back half, like the last, seriously, like 40% of the game is linear as shit. It does not, it's the opposite of the beginning, and it's not what they wanted, but they ran out of time and budget. And that's almost what this feels like, where the beginning is so bloated, maybe the right word, actually.
I would say bloated.
Yeah, it feels very bloated. And that's like a negative word, obviously, but like there's a bunch of stuff there that you could do. I don't want to do many of those things, so it feels bloated to me, but it's like, good gameplay experience for other people, I'm sure. But then as we get towards the end, it's way less bloated, right? And when I get back to the port, it's like, oh, you can go do some more quests or side quests and do hunts and stuff. I was like, nope, what's the next part of the story? We're just moving forward. I finished the game at level 48 for my characters, across all the characters.
Level 40.
You finished level 40? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm level 40 across. I don't even think 3 of my characters are 40 and 3 of them are 39.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. So I'm looking forward to talking about that piece in the next podcast. But was there the Great Crystal? I keep coming back to the Great Crystal as like a very weird spot in this game where the map's gone, right? The mini map doesn't do shit for you. This was the place where Anthony was talking about, he thought when we got to this part, we'd be really frustrated. And on the PS2, when he played at the beginning, he would have to draw like node maps to figure out which up and which down went where and whatever else. I used the guide. I followed the guide. That cut the frustration for me, but I'm curious what you did.
I just ran blindly through, blatantly honest. And I just started running around. Next thing you know, I was at a boss fight. I'm like, wait, what? Okay.
You went the right way, I guess, then, huh?
I don't know. I probably did some backtracking. I don't know. Honest to God, when I was doing that earlier today, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. I just went from one little node in the crystal to the next, killing shit, and just assumed that eventually I was going to have to do whatever I did. And it's like, oh, I found this lever, trigger it, sweet, go on to the next. Oh, I found another lever, trigger it, sweet, go on to the next. And then, eventually it was like, oh, this thing opened and I'm now fighting something. Okay, cool. I honest to God I don't know why. This kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I wasn't dreading the game, and it didn't bother me that I was running around without any idea in that game at all. Like, I don't know why. I was just like, okay. I think because I had in my head I needed to level up, that I was like, okay, I'm fine with this.
And then before you got the crystal, like the lever piece is like that whole maze is the wrong word, but like going up and down trying to open the different gates that are closed, and then there are like invisible bridges, right, from one section to the next. Wasn't that this piece?
Yeah, that was Giruvegan before you get into the crystal itself.
Yeah, and I thought that was again that was one of the many pieces here that was like different, and it was fairly repetitive the way that the thing was designed, and we had to go down to go up and whatever else to open those gates. But it was short enough that it was interesting, something different. But you know, it's the same thing of solving this fairly easy puzzle and then just wailing on a bunch of monsters.
Again, I think my whole thing was I walked into there like level 34, and I was like, these things are like level 46.
Oh, and they were kind of stomping you a little bit?
No, they weren't stomping me, so I was like, okay, I don't mind running around a little bit because I need to get some levels. Otherwise, I have a sneaking suspicion I'm going to get my ass handed to me. And then next thing you know, I'm walking across this green platform into a crystal, and I'm like, oh shit. I got through that faster than I expected, not because I was trying. I think I got through it faster than because I wasn't trying to get through it. And I don't know if I went the right route or if I just wandered around and eventually found my way through.
Yeah, before the crystal, you mean? That whole Giruvegan piece?
Whole both Giruvegan and the crystal itself. I don't know if I went the shortest route. I have zero clue. I probably did not.
Yeah, I felt like Giruvegan I felt like you had to explore all of it to like unlock all of the gates to go, but then I believe some of the gates just held some special items, which I can't remember which ones they were at this point. But it felt fairly straightforward once you realized that there were like invisible bridges that you had to cross into the next area too. So yeah, I don't know. Varied enough to keep my interest and short enough to not overstay its welcome.
I will say that my one complaint about this whole section, and I feel like it's gotten to be more of a trend in the last part, is the amount of status effects that get capped on your party. Like we were having this conversation in the chat, and Anthony weighed in about having the Asuna. Like, I use that, and you're like, nope, I use remedies the whole time.
I did. I never ever used Asuna, and I didn't even, only because I think Anthony pointed out, using the money cheat, I used it right about the time when like status effects were starting to really come in. So I had on hand all the items I needed, so I just put gambits to them or did it manually.
Yeah, I mean, I had gambits for the Asuna, but I was just like, holy crap, my healer is just, that's all he does is Asuna, okay, heal. Asuna, heal. Like, come on, man. Like, this is getting ridiculous.
It's a little repetitive in that way, or ridiculous, like there's so much shit happening?
It's just excessive how much it is. Like, there's the one boss before you get into Giruvegan, the flower thing. I'm looking at right now. Rough. Yeah. Like, that's all the freaking thing does.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting going, dude, this is freaking annoying. And I actually went out and purposely bought the accessories that block confusion, because when it did a mass confusion, or it wasn't this one, but it was one of the other ones I was bitching about that did that. It would do mass confusion, and I couldn't clean it off any of my party members, and they would literally just kill each other.
Yeah, they start smacking each other. Yeah, Rafflesia, whatever, did confuse for sure. I would use the sand constantly.
I just put the bracelets on that made my characters immune to it, just to be like, you know what, F you, man, I'm sick of this one. But then it's like sap all the time, or freaking disease, or poison, or silence, or all this other crap. I'm like, come on, dude, just can we stop?
I was so annoyed with sap and slow. Like, you're taking away my health. I got to do regen to build it up. It did feel like balancing or battling the status effects more than the mechanics of the boss and the physical dance with the boss. It was just like, okay, managing items, managing gambits to get those things off of me.
Yeah, I face tanked everything. Like whatever mechanics there was in a boss fight, I have no idea what they were. I think it was the first time I went to the Feywood. I ended up fighting the bomb boss.
Oh yeah, sure. Mm.
And Anthony was like, "Hey, what tactic did you use?" I'm like, "Tactic? What tactic?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I go, "I just realized that every time I killed one of the little ones, he spawned another one. So I said, fuck it. And I face tanked him. And then he went down. And Anthony was like, wait, but he's supposed to have these different mechanics. I go, well, I didn't see them. I don't know what they were. And I can say that about every single boss in this game. I don't know what any of the mechanics were. I don't know about you.
Well, so for example, at the beginning of Giruvegan, there was Daedalus, that monster with no head. Face tanked him, absolutely. Like it just, I took off huge slivers of his health, and it didn't go very long. Tyrant was the next one, which was a dragon. That was mainly the same thing. The one that was problematic a little bit was Shemhazai. And only because with Shemhazai, when you're using elemental damage, it changes its weakness or changes its it changes its weakness. So when it changes, anything it's not weak to, it starts healing based on that element. So I think that was the one where I'd be attacking, and the health be going down in smaller slivers than the previous bosses, and then it would start going back up. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then I went and looked at my characters who had different weapons that had elemental damage, and I just took all the elemental weapons off and just used weaker weapons that didn't have elemental, and then slowly pushed away on that boss. I think that one is one of the few that I resorted to using mists on to wrap up. And I think there was another one later with one of the in our next chunk, basically, or our last chunk. But other than that, yeah, I feel like for the most part, I agree with you where I was strong enough that I could just whack away and eventually just defeat the boss.
You talking about Shemhazai reminded me, when I was fighting him, I noticed that my original group was Balthier, Bosch, and Pinello. And I was like, why is his health going down and then jumping back up? And then I realized every time, for whatever reason, whenever Bosch attacked, his health went up. I was like, okay, there must be something about his weapon. And here's the honest God truth. I never paid attention to any status or elements or anything else on any of my characters' weapons. So I was like, okay, drop Bosch from the party, pull Vaughn in. Oh, look, his health's getting chunked out left and right. Okay, I'm just going to leave these three in here. I'm going to face take him to the ground. Okay, he's dead. Sweet, moving on.
So you weren't like interrogating, what about Bosch is making his health go up? You're just like, fuck this guy, bringing a new one.
Literally, I was like, I was assumed immediately that there had been something about what he was doing that had to have been giving health back. And I was like, okay, so I'm just taking him out of the party and put someone else in.
Yeah, I mean, same idea, right? Yeah,
yeah, and it immediately worked. Like Vaughn went up and hit him. I like just saw a giant chunk coming out of his health. I'm like, sweet, here's my group, and taking them down.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely one of the two where I had to bring in, or I felt like I needed to bring in the quickenings just because of that down health, back up, down. I was like, I just want to end this. Let's fucking do it. At that point, it almost felt like from this point on, just like boss. So. Yeah,
I was like looking, I'm like, you look at it like there's a boss coming into Giruvegan. Then there's like, before you even get to the outside of it, then there's immediately one at the main entrance. You go through, it's like three more before you get to the top of the crystal. It's like, holy crap, man. And then when you look at it, then the next section is like, it literally is just like, okay, run around for 2 minutes, boss. Run around for another minute, boss. Oh, wait, here's another boss. It's like, oh, okay, this is how we're going to roll.
Yeah, and I found there wasn't a ton of variety. I mean, certainly the enemy design, like the way the art was done, there's tons of variety. But because I was face tanking the bosses and cutting their health down so drastically, except for this one, I didn't. There wasn't a lot of that physical dance of figuring out like where to position, and I just kind of took them out, you know. So
Yeah,
they eventually
tank.
just kind of felt samey, even though that was maybe more on me than on the game. I did feel overpowered, partially I think because unlocking all the LP, I had everything that I needed. Have all the items made it so that the statuses were just managed juggling stuff as opposed to failing at doing that and dying. So there is certainly that.
So thinking back on it, right? We added. I think I did the LP thing long before you did.
You
because
did,
I
yeah.
was so over this game.
I did
at
it
that
after
point.
Arcades. I was like, "Fuck, are you kidding me? There's more." Nope.
But now I'm looking back and I'm like, did I rob myself of what the real experience of the game was afterwards? But at the same time, like when I couldn't have made it to this last point if I hadn't done that before. I would have been there. I remember last time we were talking, there was the one boss where I was like, no, if I hadn't done it, I would have been like, fuck this game. I'm done. I'm out.
I think that's the point for me is, and I think just video games in general, talking about cheat codes or things that the developers embed into the game, like LP and the guild cheats here, or even difficulty options. Like whatever you need to do to engage in the game in a way that either gets you to the end or gets you to a place that you're happy ending if you don't get to the credits or whatever. I think rob is a strong word. I do think about some of those earlier fights where you had popped the LP, but I hadn't yet. And I was trying to choose which pieces on my license board would help me in a certain area. And I was kind of, there was a dance in some of those boss battles or some of those mobs really where I would be down to my last person and like eke out a win. And it felt really good. My thing was simply, I was ready for a new story and a new game, and 40 hours in, I was ready to be moving on. So then I was fine. So I don't know if you robbed yourself of it. I think you more allowed yourself to kind of get to the end and experience some other stuff. But I can see the sentiment.
Yeah, I just think that what I mean by rob is because the experience of it was obviously I was able to face tank these bosses, and I swear I'm almost positive that if I did not have all of the license board like completely filled out, there's no way in hell I would beat the game at level 40. Like,
Yeah, probably not, because you have more health, you have more stuff that you can use, I guess.
yeah. So then I'm wondering if because of that, did I rob myself the chance to sit there and be, because this is one of the things that you and I've had the conversation before that I thoroughly enjoy, and it's why I love games like Souls, all the Souls games, is because it's a dance with the bosses and figuring out what that dance is. And here, there was no need for me to figure out the dance because I had all the abilities, I had all the bonus to the health, to the magic points, everything across the board. So I could literally just walk in and be like, "Yo, hi, you hit me, I hit you, I hit harder, you die."
Yeah, I think I get that sentiment. Thinking about your experience of Souls games versus this is that even if you didn't do that, the LP pop, you don't have that dance with the boss because it's more gambit based. There's not a ton that you can do on your own, right? In that dance, it's really automated for the most part. I don't really think there is, going into the menu and choosing the item, you can manually do that, but it still feels like a level of remove or more levels than a Souls game where you're like your inputs matter. When you commit to an animation, you're fucked. It's that level of precise control that was never here, even early on.
Yeah, that's fair. And yeah, at the end of the day, I agree with what you said the most part. Whatever gets you to get to the point of the game where you're like, okay, I'm done. I've had my experience. I'm good. I'm
Exactly.
happy.
Yeah.
And to my point earlier, and that goes along with that. If I hadn't popped the license board thing when I did, I probably would have quit before I got to this point because I was done with this game.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that conversation does remind me of Elden Ring a little bit, where I got to the capital, Lanedale capital, I think, and just kind of stopped. And it took you coming in and helping me get past the part where I was kind of stuck at to then progress. So, it's sort of like a cheat code. I needed you to come in and help me move on. And then later, there was one or two bosses where I needed to call in. Yeah, I forget what it's called, but using the finger to bring somebody in. And especially the last boss, I would never have beaten that last boss unless if I didn't have help. So in some way, those are certainly like cheats, but they were necessary for those very narrow parts of the game to get me to the next part that I thoroughly enjoyed on my own, kind of thing.
So you call them cheats in that regard, and this is where
I'm at air quotes here. You can't see my air quotes.
Yeah, I know. I figured you are. But the other thing I look at this is, so the original, and I don't know when the LP thing was put in, because the original part of the game, there was a lot of differences that maybe you've read about them. I have zero clue about them. I know what Anthony has said is like, oh, for like things like you picked your job, you're SOL, you're not resetting it. I think was the original thing, and then you couldn't double up on the jobs either.
That's right.
Originally, and there's probably a bunch of other things. So I always wonder when they came back and redid this and added the additional things in. Does that mean that they are admitting that their original work was not what they wanted? But like with Elden Ring, you say like, oh, I air quoting the cheats, but that was in the release state. That was literally how the game came out the door.
Right.
And using the stuff like this LP thing was 100% not how the game was released. And it was something that came years after that initial release that they put that in there.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, I think a refinement is probably how I would say it. But my understanding from reading forums where people have played this game and are playing it again and again, the part of the fun for some people, not for me, and probably not for you, is building different builds and seeing what works and playing with the 6 different jobs and how they interact. And it's quicker to open the license board up immediately and start, playing, in the moment, as opposed to having to fight through 3/4 of the game to get enough license points to fuck with something and realize, oh, that doesn't even fucking work. That was my impression. I don't know why the developers themselves did it, other than people who are picking the Zodiac Age up are replaying it, perhaps. So it's a quicker way to replay. But there were many people, I'm sure, who picked it up for the first time.
Us included.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so overall, I enjoyed that section. Sounds like you didn't hate it, maybe enjoyed it a little more than previous sections.
So I definitely enjoyed it more than Arcades, because if that whole section just disappeared from the face of the game, you would not see one complaint from me whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. All right. Anything else for this section of the game, Travis?
No, I mean, yeah, I think we've covered everything. There's nothing too major about it. I will say it went from complete detest the game to, okay, it's all right. It's middling for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good place. Good place for it to be. For me, I went from, this is okay, to, oh, this is actually quite good. So I enjoyed that for sure. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the RPG Backlog. If you like our show, please rate us on your podcast service of choice. And when we come back for the next episode, we will be talking about Pharaoh's first, second, and third ascent. So we'll see you next time.